So, what actually is self esteem? It's kind of an interesting question. Like, what is it? Is it just positive self talk? Is it a belief in the self? Why do some people seem to have it? Why do some people seem to not have it? I want to have a little conversation to help us unpack self esteem just a little bit. The reality is that self esteem is a reflection of congruency. So the more congruent we are in something, just by nature of the congruency, the more self esteem we have about that. Let me give you a little bit of an example. When we are doing something that we love or that we feel inspired by, and we feel deeply connected to it, we naturally have high self esteem because we love it. We identify in it. We believe that we can. We feel purposeful when we are doing it. But when we're trying to do something that isn't meaningful to us, maybe it's coming from a should, or we think we're supposed to, or we're trying to be someone that we're not, well, out come the symptoms of low self esteem. And doesn't that just make sense? Low self esteem symptoms are really symptoms of dysregulation. They're symptoms of the voices inside that seem negative, but really it's just feedback trying to say, what are you doing? Why are you trying to be someone that you're not? The dysregulation in the body is feedback to say, well, wait a second, what's going on here? So it's an interesting thing to think about self-esteem, or the experience of self-esteem is actually feedback around congruency. We see this a lot with children. A child that someone may look at and go, oh my goodness, this child has low self-esteem, right? They don't believe that they're good enough in math. But when you really sit down and ask the child doesn't care about math. They don't love math. They're not feeling inspired by math. But what they do feel inspired by is art. They love art. And when engaged in their art making process, they have huge self-esteem, huge self-worth. They believe that they can. Their voice inside is not shooting them, and their physiology is reflecting that there's actually more regulation and congruency. So it's just an interesting thing to think that maybe we all have high self-esteem in areas where we are congruent and doing what we love. And maybe we all have low self-esteem in areas where we're trying to be someone that we're not, or we're trying to live up to an expectation or a belief about what we should be doing or how we should be performing or what we should be loving, or whatever other kind of ingested message we may have. So it's not the entire picture when we're trying to understand self-esteem, but it's an important consideration when we're trying to understand self-esteem. That maybe part of self-esteem is really just a feedback system, and that our feedback system is trying to let us know just how congruent we're being and how much permission we're giving ourselves to really be who we actually are and to do what we would love to do versus trying to be someone that we're not, trying to fit in, trying to perform, and having expectations that don't actually match what's really deeply and truly meaningful for us in our hearts. So next time that you have a judgment on yourself or on someone else about, oh my goodness, I've got low self-esteem or low self-worth, or this child or this individual does, I want you to stop and ask yourself the question, where do they have high self-esteem? Where do you have high self-worth? And I want you just to see if maybe that evaluation is really just a result of looking in a particular area of life where maybe you or maybe the individual that you're judging is not really that inspired. But when you look at areas where you're inspired and where they're inspired, you actually see a completely different set of symptoms.